The lawyer's office smelled like old paper and lemon polish. I sat in the leather chair, still numb from my grandfather's funeral 3 days prior, while Mr. Henderson slid a thick envelope across his mahogany desk. "Your grandfather was very specific about this property, Marcus," he said, adjusting his glasses. 37 acres, the original family homestead. Been in your family since 1952. I nodded, remembering summer visits to Grandpa Joe's place. The sprawling ranch-style house with a wraparound porch, the old barn he converted into a workshop, the trails winding through oak trees. It was a world away from my cramped apartment in the city. "There's something you should know," Henderson continued, his expression darkening. "About 5 years ago, the surrounding area was developed. They built a subdivision called Meadowbrook Estates right up to your property line, and they formed an HOA. "Okay," I said slowly. "But Grandpa's property isn't part of it, right?" "Correct. His land predates everything. It's grandfathered in, completely independent. But," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "your grandfather had some disputes with them before he passed. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia Coldwell. She's been rather persistent about certain matters. I should have paid more attention to that warning." Moving day arrived on a Saturday in late April. The moment the moving truck pulled into the long gravel driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The house stood exactly as I remembered it. Weatherwood siding, that magnificent porch, Grandpa's wind chimes singing in the breeze. The property stretched out in every direction, a patchwork of meadow, forest, and possibility. I was carrying my third box inside when a white Mercedes SUV pulled up to the edge of my driveway. A woman in her mid-50s emerged, wearing a cream pantsuit that probably cost more than my car. Her hair was an aggressive shade of blonde, style within an inch of its life. "Hello there," she called out, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "I'm Patricia Coldwell, president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Welcome to the neighborhood." I set down my box and walked over, extending my hand. "Marcus Webb, nice to meet you." Her handshake was brief, almost dismissive. "I'm so sorry about your grandfather." Such a character. The way she said it made it clear she didn't mean it as a compliment. "Now, I want to welcome you properly and discuss a few important matters. You see, while your property isn't technically within our HOA boundaries, it is surrounded by our community, and we have certain standards." "Standards?" I repeated. "Yes. For instance, that barn of yours is quite an eyesore. Our architectural committee requires all structures visible from the street to maintain a certain aesthetic. We prefer if you had it painted or perhaps removed entirely." I felt my jaw tighten. "That barn is on my property, which, as you said, isn't part of your HOA. Patricia's smile turned glacial. "Well, technically, yes. But surely you understand that property values in our community are not my concern." I finished. "Thanks for stopping by." I turned and walked back toward my house. Behind me, I heard her call out, "We'll be in touch." It sounded more like a threat than a promise. The letters started arriving within a week. The first one, on expensive cream stationery with the Meadowbrook Estates logo, informed me that my failure to maintain appropriate landscaping standards was negatively impacting the community. They demanded I cut down the wildflowers growing in my front meadow and install approved turf grass. The second letter complained about my grandfather's old pickup truck, which I had kept parked by the barn. Apparently, vehicles visible from the street needed to be newer than 10 years old and maintained in pristine condition. The third letter took issue with the chicken coop. Yes, I'd gotten chickens. 6 beautiful hens that gave me fresh eggs every morning and spent their days happily scratching around the property. According to Patricia, livestock of any kind creates an inappropriate rural atmosphere inconsistent with suburban residential standards. I threw that letter in the trash and went to collect eggs. But Patricia wasn't finished. She started showing up in person, always with a new complaint. My porch furniture was shabby. The solar panels I'd installed were visually disruptive. The vegetable garden I'd planted was more appropriate for agricultural zoning. Each visit ended the same way, with her thin-lipped declaration that I was bringing down the neighborhood. One afternoon, I was repairing the barn door when I heard voices at the property line. Patricia stood there with two other people, a man and a woman in business casual, all of them pointing at various parts of my land and taking notes. I walked over, wiping grease from my hands. "Can I help you?" Patricia jumped slightly, then recovered her composure. "Marcus, we're conducting a survey." "Of my property?" "Without permission." "From the public easement," she corrected sharply. "We're documenting code violations to present to the county." The man with her, tall and balding, spoke up. "I'm Richard Thornton, HOA legal counsel. Ms. Coldwell has retained me to explore options for bringing your property into compliance with community standards." "Community standards that don't apply to my property," I said evenly. "There are nuisance ordinances," he replied. "Statutes regarding blight, health hazards, property devaluation." "My property is maintained," I interrupted. "It's clean, safe, and legal. What it isn't is sterile and cookie-cutter, like your development." Patricia's face flushed. "Your grandfather was just as stubborn and unreasonable. He refused to understand that his little farm was standing in the way of progress, of improving this area. We offered to buy him out multiple times, generous offers, and he rejected every single one. Suddenly, everything made sense. You want my land." "We want," Patricia said through gritted teeth, "our community to thrive without having to look at this rural mess every time we drive past. Your property would make an excellent location for a community center or additional housing. Something useful." "It is useful," I said quietly. "It's my home. Now get off my property line before I call the sheriff." The harassment escalated. They reported me to the county for imaginary violations, all of which inspectors dismissed. They filed noise complaints about my rooster. I didn't have a rooster. Someone even called animal control, claiming my chickens were being neglected. The officer who showed up took one look at my happy, healthy birds and apologized for wasting my time. Then came the petition. Patricia went door to door in Meadowbrook Estates, collecting signatures demanding the county rezone my property or force me to comply with HOA standards. They got 147 signatures. I got a lawyer. Her name was Jennifer Ramirez, and she'd handled my grandfather's estate. When I showed her everything, the letters, the complaints, the petition, she actually smiled. "They've overplayed their hand," she said. "Way overplayed it. Your grandfather dealt with the same nonsense. He documented everything. Did you find the boxes in the study?" I had 3 boxes full of letters, photos, and records going back 5 years. Grandpa Joe had been meticulous, noting every interaction, every threat, every attempt to pressure him into selling. "We're going to file a harassment suit," Jennifer said, "and we're going to win." The hearing took place on a sweltering Tuesday in July. The county courthouse was packed. Apparently, the case had attracted local media attention. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table with Richard Thornton, looking confident. Jennifer presented our case methodically. The years of harassment, the baseless complaints, the admitted attempts to force a sale, the violation of my right to quiet enjoyment of my property. She even had testimony from other property owners who'd been bullied by the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. When it was Patricia's turn, she tried to paint herself as a concerned neighbor, just trying to maintain property values. But under Jennifer's cross-examination, she fell apart. "Isn't it true that the HOA development company still owns shares in Meadowbrook Estates?" "Yes, but..." "And isn't it true that you serve on that company's board?" "That's not relevant." "And isn't it true that you stand to personally profit if Mr. Webb's property is acquired and developed?" Silence. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Carol Martinez, removed her glasses. "Ms. Coldwell, this court finds your pattern of behavior toward Mr. Webb and his late grandfather to be harassment, plain and simple. Your HOA has no jurisdiction over his property and never will. I'm granting the restraining order. You and your HOA are to cease all contact with Mr. Webb unless he initiates it. Furthermore, I'm ordering your HOA to pay Mr. Webb's legal fees and damages in the amount of $25,000. Patricia's face went white. Judge Martinez wasn't finished. "Let me be very clear. This county values property rights. Mr. Webb's land is legally his to use as he sees fit, within the bounds of existing county codes, which is not violated. If this harassment continues, I will hold you in contempt. Do we understand each other? Yes, Your Honor, Patricia whispered. That was 6 months ago. The check arrived 3 weeks after the hearing. I used part of it to fully restore the barn and install a beautiful new sign at the end of my driveway. Webb Family Farm Estate 1952. Patricia resigned from the HOA shortly after. I heard she moved to another state. The new HOA president, a reasonable man named Tom Chun, stopped by once to apologize for everything and assure me they just want to be good neighbors. We actually have coffee occasionally now. My chickens are thriving. I've expanded the garden. Last month, I adopted a rescue dog named Biscuit who loves running the trails through property. I've started inviting local school groups to visit the farm, teaching kids about sustainable living and where their food comes from. On quiet evenings, I sit on Grandpa's porch with a glass of sweet tea, listening to the wind chimes and watching the sunset over land that's been my family for over 70 years. I think about Grandpa Joe standing his ground against people who couldn't understand that some things matter more than property values and pristine lawns. This land isn't going anywhere. Neither am I. Some battles are worth fighting. Some ground is worth holding. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well on your own terms, on your own land, in your own way. The chickens agree with me.